We have a couple people missing this morning. I know that Councilor Auger and Vaser are going to be absent. It looks like we're also missing Rob Pell at the moment, so I'm not sure if he'll scoot in late or not. But we are doing things a little bit different starting today with regard to our committee motions. Here's Rob coming in the back. So this is a change for us. We historically have been reading the motions from our committees and commissions at the Wednesday evening meetings, and now we're going to start doing them during our Monday workshops and have a little bit of a presentation and opportunity to ask questions. I know we have looks like quite a few committee and commission members here in the audience, so thanks for taking time out of your day to be here with us. We're going to have Tony Meekum kick us off with the Urban Tree Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's great to be back in front of you. I'm Tony Meekum, the urban forester for the city, and I'm with the Community Development and Public Works departments, and I'm the liaison to the Urban Tree Advisory Committee. The Urban Tree Advisory Committee moved to recommend that the replacement tree species for what we've been calling Median Island 3 of Northwest Washington Boulevard be tulip trees, and all other replacement trees be black tupelos. The relationship to council goals: maintain, operate, and expand our infrastructure to meet community needs by enhancing our community's tree canopy. For a very brief background, at the council's meeting on April 7th, 2021, staff presented the Urban Tree Advisory Committee's motion to replace cherry trees from the most northern median island of Washington Boulevard with black tupelos. Council approved the committee's recommendation and expanded the project to all median islands of the boulevard that currently contain cherry trees. And on the right is a Google Earth image showing all 4 of those islands. At the April 12th meeting of the Urban Tree Advisory Committee, the committee chose to review the species selection for the additional islands at their May meeting. So on May 10th, the committee at their meeting chose a different species for Island 3, the tulip tree. The scientific name is Liriodendron tulipifera. And that Island 3 is just south of the cross street, Northwest Manzanita Avenue. Call to action date is at council's discretion. Staff recommendation is before the end of June so that the trees for this project can be ordered for our fall delivery and planting. And we have the chair of the Urban Tree Advisory Committee here, Doug Tripp, who can answer questions along with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug, did you have anything you wanted to say before we ask questions, or?
Not necessarily, other than just one thing that the committee noted was that there'd be some benefits in adding some diversity to the row, other than just the red maples that already exist in one of the islands and the black tupelos. And history in this community shows that the Liriodendron tulipiferas do pretty well in our parks and in irrigated areas. So I think it's a good consideration to add to that landscape strip.
All right, council, do you have questions? Rick?
Thank you, Tony. So on the tulip tree, that's the one that has those gorgeous either white or pink tulip-shaped flowers that come out once a year. Is that true?
Yeah, the flowers are tulip-shaped, and the tulip tree is part of the magnolia larger family. So yeah, they do have those distinctive flowers.
We have one down the street from us. It's absolutely gorgeous when it blooms. Thank you for choosing that.
Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. So just to be clear, Island 1 would be black tupelo, Island 2 would be red maple, Island 3 would be the tulip trees, and Island 4 would be black tupelo again?
That's correct.
Okay. Could either of you speak to why in this particular project more diversity would be a better thing? Because I can also see a counter argument to where, you know, you have a boulevard of all the same trees, which would look nice as well. So I was just wondering the thought process.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think it's just really better to be safe than sorry to just add some diversity into some of those landscapes and not really get too hung up on the uniformity of some of those landscapes. Diversity can be a really beneficial thing in terms of insects, different pests that affect some of these areas or that are even moving into these areas. And also diseases that are constantly affecting some of these trees that aren't necessarily native to this area, but we are constantly bringing in. Black tupelos are trees that we don't really know a whole lot about in this particular community, in this climate. And just looking back on some of the trees that we've introduced into this area, it takes time to really learn about how they're going to impact some of the infrastructure and their susceptibility to some of these pests and diseases. And we know that these tulip poplars or the Liriodendron tulipiferas are relatively resistant to a wide range of insects around here, and they do well in those soil types and in those particular situations. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, and in addition, Brian, the committee, when they chose replacement trees, they looked at fall foliage colors to see if that was going to be kind of the same color. And then also the height of the trees so that they would be somewhat uniform. And so they tried to pick similar species that have similar characteristics and that diversity. And Tony did a good job of doing that for us. He picked out about 6 different trees that we could choose from that he thought would be useful. And then we have the survey results from the citizens.
Thanks, Joel. Valerie?
Yeah, my question is looking down at the bottom, I'm going to assume that that picture that we have that has the background, because I noticed that that picture has a foliage, it's kind of a gold tree, that is the tulip tree in its, am I correct?
The bottom left
Yes,
photo?
the bottom right. So that's what I was
Oh.
wondering about too, is whether it had a color in the fall. Of course, I know it has the beautiful spring tulips, but I was wondering if it also had the color in the fall, so.
Yeah, that photo that's the middle or center right is a photo I took from one of the trees at Lawnridge Park.
Okay.
And so that tree is still in its youth. So that's why I showed the other photo to the left of it to show what it could look like in maturity. But yes, it does have that fall color as you
Okay.
see in that photo.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the description. That helped me a lot.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, gentlemen, for being here and answering the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, did you have any discussion? Valerie?
I was just going to ask if they need anything. I mean, I would like to say to go ahead and order the trees and have them ready for the planting. And if they need our direction at this point, I'll
Good
make
question.
a motion
Aaron,
to do
what do you
that.
need from us?
Yeah, ultimately, we were wanting some direction, and if you're fine with the recommendation, and that would be great.
Okay, so I think, do you want us to vote on the recommendation? Or do you want me to make a motion?
You can just make a motion.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to accept the Urban Tree Advisory Committee's recommendation to put in a tulip tree in the island number 3.
Is there a second? Second from Rob, thank you. All right, any discussion? Ready to vote? Valerie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Brian?
I didn't know we did motions at workshops, but yes.
We can. It's more formal than giving a preference anyway. Joel?
Yes.
Joel give a nod first. Rick?
Yes.
All right, motion carries 6-0. Yeah, I mean, I think on something like this, we could either just give preference without the vote, which is obviously,
Not spending any money.
got some issues, or we could just put it on consent calendar or something for the next meeting, but. All right, next up is a motion from the Historical Building and Sites Commission.
Good morning, thank you. My name is Donna Rupp. I'm with Community Development, the Associate Planner. And these are the motions that came out of the HBSC. It's all printed out, Historical Buildings and Sites Commission, but that's a mouthful, so I'm going to refer to it as HBSC. There were two motions that came out of the May 6th meeting. Motion number 1, recommend that the site plan and the plan for the buildings that are proposed to take place on the L Street Forest Service compound property comes before the Historical Buildings and Sites Commission for review before it is permitted. Relationship to council goals. This motion supports council's goal to provide cooperative shared leadership involving council, staff, and community. A little bit of background on this for the council. Building of new residences has begun on property that was platted as a subdivision in 1889, and that plat was never abandoned. It is still valid. The existing buildings on the site, the former U.S. Forest Service compound, is now under private ownership, and they are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. No historic buildings are being altered by construction of the new residences. The yellow circle down here indicates the area of where the new residences are being built. Currently, the developer submitted 5 building permits for single-family dwellings on pre-existing lots. Community development is obligated to process permits if they are on legal building lots, and permits were approved and issued. These lots are outside of the historic district. Article 13 does not require HBSC review of residential permits for new construction if they're outside of the historic district. Since the site is on the National Register, HBSC is requesting review of the single-family permits. There are 2 call to actions on this motion. There are 2 motions to go over, so this is motion 1. Either continue to process the building permits for the compound through community development, or as courtesy forward to the HBSC future residential building plans for the compound. Motion number 2 from the May 6th meeting was recommend to council that Riverside Park be added to the Grants Pass local landmark listings. Again, this is the same goal, supporting the goal to provide cooperative shared leadership involving council, staff, and community. The call to action for motion 2 is to place on future council action to add the Riverside Park to the city's local historic landmarks listing, or take no action. That is my presentation.
Thank you, Donna.
The chair of HBSC is here, Mr. Warborn. Did you want him up now, or did you have questions for me?
Yeah, Ward, did you have anything you wanted to add before we ask questions? Okay, stand up and go ahead and
I don't know. Is that okay?
it's okay with me.
It's up to the mayor. It's up to the mayor. There you go.
So first, I would like to thank you all because I think this is significant. I think you've really honored and elevated your appointed advisory committees and commissions by allowing us to come in and speak to you and have dialogue with you. And so I want to thank you for that. I think it's significant. So thank you. So there is quite a history with, we'll take these one at a time, but there's quite a history with the first motion, which is the L Street Forest Service compound. and I disagree with some of the information. I didn't get this presentation until just a few minutes ago. So hopefully in the future, these will be sent out to the chair or whoever's making the presentation in advance. But I did get it a few minutes ago. Thank you, Brad. And but basically, over the years, the Historical Building and Sites Commission has reviewed exterior alterations or new additions or demolitions, whatever, to 3 categories: properties and sites within the historic district, landmark properties, local landmark properties, and National Historic Register of Places properties. And so the National Historic Register is kind of the top of the pack as far as an honor historically. It's significant. They put out brochures. People seek them out. People go through a lot of work to attain that status. And in any case, over the years, the HBSC has reviewed National Historic properties. We only have about 25 in the city, which isn't very many. We have a couple of other historic commissioners here in the audience, and both of them are affiliated with National Register properties. But anyway, the Redwood Hotel is an example that came before the commission a few years ago, National Historic Register property. Another property is, I believe it's the Thomas Croxton House on 2nd Street, and part of the Pioneer family that Virginia Ford is affiliated with that family. So we have a tradition and a history of reviewing National Historic properties. In 2018, it was brought to us to review a proposal from the developer that had purchased the L Street Forest Service compound property, and that was Lorelei Properties in 2018. And they had a wonderful plan, and they brought it before us because they were seeking our review and our guidance and our approval. And basically, they were looking to demolish 4 buildings on that property. And so I want to say that every demolition that has come before us that I know of in the last 25 years, we have approved. And in this case, in 2018, the Lorelei had a beautiful plan of adding 26 townhouse units to the L Street Forest Service compound. And they had wonderful architectural renderings, and they took into account that this was a National Register, a very significant property, and they actually reflected the character of this property in their new development. And so and then they also, with the 3 other buildings, they talked about using the big, huge, wonderful building that was the mechanic shop, which I know our liaison, Councilor King, used to take equipment there to be serviced occasionally. But they talked about making that big, wonderful building that was built in 1933 by the Civilian Conservation Corps during the Depression. They talked about making that building potentially a community center and even open to the public, not just the residents. And they also talked about making one of the smaller buildings a coffee house and another building kind of an art center. So we were just like ecstatic with the plan. I mean, we thought this plan, it's a win-win. It does everything that we would like to see happen. And I mean, to me, we really need, and our goal is to have a balance of development and preservation. And I don't think that's ever been more important than today when we need additional housing. And everybody knows that we need additional housing. But if we just let it go unbridled and rampant development with no guidelines, unfortunately, that preservation side of it is going to be lost. And so the hometown livability that we once had kind of disappears with that. And so there is a balance there that I think is a win-win. And so all we asked, I mean, we had it on our agenda for several months What's going on? Staff update. What's going on with this L Street Forest compound? Probably for a year. From the time that the current owners bought the property. What's going on with it? No update, no update, no update, until May. All of a sudden the update is, well, we've already issued them permits. And it's like, wait a minute. We've been asking for a year. Are we not going to be able to review it? No, you're not. You don't get to review it. We've already issued permits. And so we were offended because we negotiated an agreement with the former property owners. And that agreement was one that we were excited about, that provided multifamily housing, and it reflected the character of and history of that very important property. So we were ecstatic about it, and they said the only thing is we would like to demolish those 4 buildings right now rather than wait until development permits are issued for the new construction. And we said, why? And they said, well, they're being defaced and this and that, and we just want to get them out of there. And so we said, okay, but with the caveat that when you do build the townhouses, that you come before us and they reflect the character as you are showing in your architectural renderings. And they said, okay. And so that was our deal, and we were happy with that. We felt it was a win-win, that we were going to gain housing that respected the property, and potentially some other structures that would serve not only the housing development but the community and keep it intact. And that was huge. So I mean, if every development went that way, we would all be winners in the future. So anyway, at our last meeting, I received a call from the developer, Michael Black, and he asked if he could come to our meeting and talk, and I said yes. I said, we most likely will not be making any kind of decisions on anything, but he said, no, I just want to come and present a plan and talk to you, and I'll have a slideshow. And I said, okay, so he did. And he came to our meeting last week, and I think we were very pleasantly pleased. I know I was personally, and I think that he and his partner have put a lot of thought into it. And I personally, they're looking at what they call neo-traditional development, which is kind of a throwback. It's contemporary development that takes into account historical features. And he showed some colors, like various greens and so forth, that would kind of reflect, the fact that it was a Forest Service development and property. And he asked for our guidance on what they do with the big old building, that the other developers had said they might make it a community type center or a gathering place or whatever. So he wanted our input on that. And so basically what we asked is, one, in the future, when we've been asking for an update, please don't wait until you've issued the permits before you issue us the update when we've been asking for a year. And really just to stay consistent here, because, we have changes in counselors, we have frequent changes in staff, and in this case, we had a change in property owners. When someone buys a National Register property, that status goes on, just like an easement or whatever. It continues with the property, which prevents nothing that, as far as I know, prevents nothing that these developers want to do. The four buildings that they wanted out of there and demolished have been demolished with our approval. And so all we're asking is that the council look at this long term and say, yeah, in many ways in the city we need to be more consistent. And this is one of them. This is one where because of the frequent changes in ownership and councilors and committee members, commission members, we need to affirm the Historic Building and Sites Commission authority to review these important historic structures. And again, those are structures and sites within the historic district, local landmarks, and National Register properties. So we're asking for the council to affirm that. Number one, we're not trying to block anything at all in this development, but we're asking for that, and also that you affirm the agreement that was made with the former developer in 2018. And basically that is to make this to reflect the historic character of the property. So it's very simple. And if that happens, I think it's a win-win for everybody, including the developer, and he indicated he agreed with that as well. Any questions?
Council, questions? Rob?
So, quick question, Ward. So if I have this right, because I wasn't on the commission when this property came before it, but a condition of demolition basically was that there would be review of whatever was going to replace it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, the reason that we allowed the demolition to take place, that we agreed to that to take place right away, was because they stressed the importance of that, but part of that agreement was that, yeah, but when you get ready to construct those townhouses, that plan comes back before us for guidance and review. And that really is what it is. It's guidance. It's, you know, and I think Michael Black alluded to that. You know, we want to hear what you guys think. We want to hear what we can do to make it better and make it more historic. So yes.
Joel?
So I really enjoyed the presentation by the developer and what he had planned. So I just had a quick question for him, and because I want to kind of highlight him and honor him in what he was doing. Could you quickly describe what you presented to the committee? And no?
Mark?
We can't be doing this. This is something that could be a quasi-judicial matter that could come before the council at some point in the future.
Well, I
We're
guess
way out based on
I
this.
can't
Thank
do
you.
that, so I won't. Okay.
Okay.
So let me ask a quick question then. Warren, you and I had discussed earlier his presentation. Would you have had anything other besides that which was presented that you felt would be needed to move on?
No, I don't think so. I think just really before any more permits are issued that we see the plan. And I mean, what we found in the past is sometimes developers come in with a plan and they make it all, you know, they know, well, how do we want to appeal to this group? But then when it turns out, whether it changes hands or whatever, then maybe they don't want to honor it. And I think the council would probably feel the same way the commission does. If somebody comes in here and makes a plan and you agree to it with conditions that, you know, if they sell that property, when it comes back around, especially with something like a National Register property or something with an easement or whatever it is, that you still honor that plan. And that's all we're asking, is that they honor the plan they made 3 years ago. And there's no specifics. We don't have any specific requirements that they do anything. Other than just let us see it and if needed, and in this case we all liked what we saw. I don't know that we would need to make any suggestions. We may just say we love it, you know, take it away.
Board, I have a request. It didn't occur to me at the time that I let you stand there that we were taking staff's mic away from being able to help answer questions. So at this time, could I have you move back around here so that we can also give Donna access to the microphone? Because I do have a question just about the process of what would normally happen for a request such as this. So I don't know if Donna or Brad who needs to answer it, but is there any formalized role of the HBSC when it comes to National Register properties and building permits?
So Article 13 and Schedule 2 is what sets out the procedures in our code for how we review historic properties. It's called Schedule 13.2. It says procedure for historic review, and it has one category called new construction in the district, which refers to the historic district. And then it tells you, which categories HBSC gets to review or has, it has to review. And it sets out the types of applications, and that does require a HBSC review for new construction in the district. So that's clear. This property is, as Donna mentioned, is not in the district. And then there's another category in 13.2 called demolition of landmarks. And it's very clear that HBSC does review the demolition of landmarks, and that is also a Type 3 application. And that was done a few years ago, as Ward referred to, when 4 buildings that were previously on this property were demolished. So they did review that at that time. So the process is, is pretty well outlined there. This is what staff followed. Historically, if HBSC has reviewed National Register properties, all of them, then we would, in my opinion, we would need to change Article 13, to require that, since it's not in the district.
So at this point, they were involved because of the demolition with the previous owner of the property, but they wouldn't have a future role in development of the property per the Article 13.
That's correct, yeah, unless there's modifications to the historic structures themselves. Yeah, which in this case, none of the historic structures are being modified at this point. And it was made clear last week by Mr. Black that any future involvement of the project that affects those buildings, that he would be happy to come back to HBSC and talk to them.
So at this stage, do they have building permits for the new homes? Or that's what they're working on, but they're not working on building permits that regarding those historic structures?
That's correct.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions? Rob?
I do have a question, Brad. First, I would like to just make a comment that when you say that there's no historic structures that are under modification, I would argue that removal is the ultimate modification. And those historic structures were removed. And is it accurate, what Ward said earlier, is that as a condition of the demolition, one of the conditions set out was oversight of what was going to replace it? So is that accurate? That was one of the conditions of the demolition of those historic structures?
So the demolition permit, the motion by HBSC a couple of years ago for the demolition permit initially did include a condition that said that they wanted to have review of the structures. The prior director, Laura Glover, during a HBSC meeting said that she did not feel that that condition was appropriate and asked that that be stricken. And the motion made at an HBSC meeting did move to strike that condition. So that's how I'm reading it from somebody that wasn't at the meeting. That's how the record seems to show it. The findings of fact do show that that condition that says they would have review was, stricken out. So that's how we proceeded at staff level.
Ward has an answer to that question as well, it looks like. You want to answer, Ward?
Yeah, my recollection is not that the committee agreed to strike that condition, because I don't think we would have approved the demolition in advance if that condition was going to go away. And we wanted to help the developer to expedite the demolition because they felt it was important. But we never waived that. And in fact, and looking at the findings of fact document, it was crossed out. But I can tell you, I've done enough contracts over the years that I never cross something out without initialing it. And I don't believe I did strike out that condition in the findings of fact. So I differ with that, but again, I still think that we have a win-win project here, and I'm just asking, to honor what I believe, and the commission, not just me, the entire commission discussed this and believes that they did not waive that. And so I think from what I saw in Michael's presentation that they're going to do that, but we would just like the council to honor that agreement as we move forward here. And we're also willing to expedite things if necessary, although it doesn't sound like there's a huge hurry, but we're also willing to have a special meeting or, whatever it takes.
Okay, thank you. It sounds like the developer is working with you. Mark or Brad, given that this property has apparently changed hands in between the time that that decision was made, what bearing would that have on a new owner?
Well, if the condition were not stricken, and it sounds like there's some disagreement about whether or not it was stricken, I just viewed it on Brad's computer. Unless someone from staff, subsequent to the decision, went, because they had a personal issue with it, went and struck it, which I doubt, then that condition was stricken from the final order, so it would not be applicable to anybody. That said, if it had not been stricken, or if it's found out that it was not supposed to be stricken, then that would actually apply to a future owner, much like, you know, you say you get a site plan review that limits the number of trips on a convenience store or a fast food restaurant. You don't get to just remove the conditions of an entitlement just because it's changed hands. So under certain circumstances, something like that would, in essence, run with the land regardless of the owner.
So in this case, do you think it's appropriate for us to do some research? I assume we probably have an audio tape of that meeting and see if we can make a further determination about what happened in the past.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure someone can review that.
All right. Council, do you have any other questions? Are you interested in having staff review?
Very quickly.
Rob?
So, Mark, you said you just viewed the document. You could probably also send that to council, whatever the strike through or whatever, you know.
Yeah, Brad's got it on his computer right now. He could email it to council.
So you can email it. Thank you.
I think my personal preference at this moment would be for us to do some research on this specific issue, and then also perhaps out of this greater issue, if council wants to in the future consider making a condition of historic property building permits to go before the HBSC. That could be something we discuss at a future date if you're interested. Do you have other suggestions? Brian?
No, I would be in favor of that.
All right. Valerie?
Well, the only thing that I'm going to say is that in our packet this week, and I know we're all concerned about the clear and objective standards and trying to make it easier for people to do housing as opposed to having things put before them that are harder and more discretionary. So I'm interested in knowing, because I think legally we need to know whether that is there or not. But I do believe personally that if it is not there, then we just basically have to go based upon clear and objective and say they have the right to go ahead and do that. And if we want to in the future do something about it, that's something. But it does go back to the legality of whether it was stricken or not.
Yeah, and the language just says they have to submit a major site plan, so it didn't go into detail about really much of anything else as far as what all would be elements of their plan.
And I see, obviously, when Michael Black bought the property, he bought it knowing that there was a National Historic Site there. I would imagine that the people who were there before also wanted the demolition, because if you're going to do something with the rest of the property, sometimes by developing the first part of the property, that gives you the capital to move forward and do the second part of the property and what you're going to do. And I would assume that, and this was a question that Sarah asked, and so the clarification was, when they go develop the land that has the actual National Historic Landmark on it, at that point, HSBC will be involved. Am I correct?
Yes, it's
Okay.
required.
So
Yes.
my feelings in terms of development, and yes, and with the need for housing, that we make fewer steps. And I do believe in the part that's a National Historic that does need to be addressed. But like I said, I'm just looking for the legal clarifications. But I think that if we were to deny it, based upon what I've heard, that we would have Aluba come back and forward and say that we can't do that. So that would be my belief.
Other comments, Rick?
Donna, I have a couple questions. On the L Street property, what is the zoning there?
I don't have it on the top of my head.
Commercial or residential?
What is it?
It's residential.
3?
R3?
Residential R3. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. And the second question, you indicated the second portion of the presentation, Riverside Park, be added to the local landmarks listing.
Yes.
Can you reconfirm to me what conditions that listing requires or has with it? By putting it into that classification, what is it? It brings some baggage with it or doesn't?
No, it's just an additional recognition of the importance of the park. It was recently added to the, see if I get this right, National Register of Historic Places through the National Park Service. So you guys well, if you're here before January, you saw that come through. But then, HBSC rightly noticed that it wasn't on our local landmark list, so we thought, well, it's nationally recognized, we should likely recognize it as a local landmark as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And then last item, you indicated motions on here. Was that the proper terminology for today's session, or?
Those are the motions from the May 6th meeting.
Those are the motions from the committee, from the commission.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I want us, before we get going on Riverside Park, just to finish if we're done with the L Street issue first. Did you have something to add, Ward?
Joel actually asked, I think, would I be okay with proceeding based on what we saw? And rather than slow this thing down, I mean, I think you guys have plenty of more important stuff on your agenda. And in respect for the developer, I know what delays are like. So I would be willing to say, from my perspective, and I don't know how the rest of the commission would feel, but I would be willing to say, let the developer go ahead and proceed with the plan as was presented to us at our meeting last week, rather than delay it further. And then anything from here on out after that front row of houses would come before us, and that would permit him to move forward with his development and not take a bunch more staff time and a bunch more council time. So I would be more than willing to do that.
Well, I think that none of us wanted to delay the development, but I think we have kind of more of a broad question here about what role we want the HBSC to play in these landmark buildings, structures that are outside of that downtown historic district is probably the bigger policy decision.
Well, it's just like landmarks, same thing. A lot of them are outside of the historic district too. So it's the same concept as National Register properties. Many of them are outside of the historic district, but those are traditionally the properties. And with the National Register properties, there is no enforcement agency. I mean, it's a bear to get those, and it's a lot of time and a lot of effort to get them. And that's why there's only about 25 in the city. But there is no, the only agency, the only entity that there is to enforce anything on National Register properties is the city. And who is the one in the city that is qualified and traditionally does that? It's the HBSC. So, but anyway, like I said, I would be willing to not delay the project further and to go with what Michael presented as far as what their plan is, and to move forward with planning together, which he wanted and agreed to do. The developer did. So.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, just to reiterate, I would be in favor of looking at Article 13, and if that commission has historically been looking at those things already, I think it probably makes sense to consider amending that article so that it's formalized. And then, Donna, you said that this property is R3, is that correct?
Yes.
And the permits are for single-family residences, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and when is our minimum density conversation happening?
Unfortunately, not until August right at the moment, but understood. Thank you. All right. I think we have some notes we can bring up again, but I think we do need to just try to confirm if we have an audio recording or something of that meeting that we are following the proper decision of what was made back in the day. Rob?
So, I guess I'm in agreement with what Ward just said, that if the HBSC was largely in favor, or they were somewhat positively impressed by the externals of those buildings, then it would probably be appropriate for that site. But I would like to add that I would hope that, since there's absolutely nothing that right now that is forcing or enforcing that the developer actually go forward with those plans, I would hope that those are the plans that are actually moved forward on, rather than any kind of bait and switch. So I'd also just like to add that in the time I've been on the historic, or I was on the Historic Commission, there were National Historic Landmark properties that absolutely came before us for advice on paint color, like the Croxton House, which is just a half block from where I live. But they was a new owner, similar situation, new owner. She really appreciated that property, but didn't really know that much about historic things, and she actually came before us for our advice. Redwood Towers, similar deal. There was a new owner who didn't know that much, at least about this area's historic, and also came before us. So that has been the tradition. It's always been that way, as far as I know, from the Historic Commission, my experience on the Historic Commission. In this particular case, it appears as if the developer has it sort of in the ballpark, at least. I just would hope that that is actually the plan that gets realized.
Well, there's a big difference between somebody voluntarily coming to the commission for advice and somebody being required to jump through that step. So I think we just need to figure out, exactly what was agreed to, and then maybe have another discussion another day about what the role of the HBSC is. As far as Riverside Park goes, does anybody have questions? Oh.
Well, I just had one more question. It was federal property when it was initially sold to the first person. And I don't know what the jurisdiction is. The archaeologist from the Forest Service recommended that it be put on the historic register. And so when it was a federal property owned by the U.S. government, it was put on as a national landmark and then sold with consultation with SHPO. And I don't know if that has any bearing on what happens after that or not. That may make it unique, it may not. There's some different jurisdictions that were involved there.
All right, are there any questions about Riverside Park, or should we put that on a future agenda to add it to the landmark list? Valerie?
I would like to make a recommendation that we add Riverside Park to the Grants Pass local landmark listing. I don't have any problem at all with that. So that's a motion.
Can your motion be just that we put it on an agenda so it gets its proper due with a little hoopla at the Wednesday business meeting?
On a consent, yeah. No, if you want to do that, that's fine. But I'm just saying I would recommend that one move forward.
Okay. Is there a second? Joel's seconding. All right. Is there interest in doing that, council? I guess this is a kind of uncharted territory here with how we're handling these workshops, but I'm seeing nods that you're interested in having it move forward to a business meeting for approval? Okay. Thank you, Donna.
Are we going to vote?
I don't think we need to vote today. We're just putting it on an agenda for a future day.
Was there a motion and a second?
Okay, vote. Are you in favor of putting it on a future meeting?
Yes.
Rob? Kurt?
Yes.
Brian?
Yeah.
Joel?
Oh, Brian, yes.
Rick?
Yes.
All right. All righty. Committee on Public Art is up next. Looks like Susan Seawriter is going to start us off.
I'm hoping to finish you off with the last committee motion for the day. Okay. So I am the staff liaison for the Committee on Public Art. And they did make a motion for the Art Box project funding. So their motion was asking City Council for $3,500 to help fund the Art Box pilot project. In relationship to your council goals is to maintain, operate, and expand our infrastructure to meet community needs. And this is an objective 8, to enhance opportunities to promote character and community spirit. Action 4 is utility box project. And the call to action, the committee is seeking council to allocate $3,500 from council discretionary funds, if that's appropriate, for the Art Box project, pilot project. The committee has secured a total of $1,500 in grant funding from the Four-Way Foundation and from the Josephine Cultural Coalition for $1,500 total, and that's going to go towards artist stipend. As the committee talked about it, to paint or to wrap those boxes does require an artist to be paid for their services. And the funds requested from council will allow for the installation of either vinyl wrap or artist paint and supplies. And a call for artists will be sent out once the committee does secure this extra $3,500. And the council and ODOT will be able to review whatever recommendations COPA makes. Once that call for artists comes back, they choose the artist. They will be bringing that before you for final approval. And we have the vice chair, Larry Evans is here. And Larry wanted to come on up and he can answer any questions. And I have pictures of each one of the boxes that they're talking about.
Now it's on. Good afternoon, councilors and mayor. Thanks for entertaining our descriptions, and thank you, Susan, for all your hard work in pulling these photos and our efforts together for our committee. So to go through what Susan's pulled together, we've basically identified 5 key locations, and she calls it a pilot project in the fact that there's a lot of boxes out there that we could do in the long term, but for the short term, we're just focusing on the 5 worst boxes due to either graffiti or damage. So the first one is, the location is at 7th and D Street. The second one is at 7th and E. And each box is approximately 3 feet tall, 2 feet wide, and about a foot thick. And the orientation face a north-south direction, others face an east-west. But they all have good visibility, and they're all on 7th Street, so when they're all done, it'll kind of serve as a campaign of sorts. We figured that it'd be better to see a succession of multiple boxes rather than having them scattered around town. So 7th and F, 7th and H, and then 7th and J.
Do you want me to go back? There's H again.
Oh, did you go back on me?
Yeah, I went back. Okay, so here we go.
So anyhow, the plan is to send out a call for artists and get some good painters and art people and review their designs, at which point we would either decide, based on what the artist's preference is, either hand painting the box or doing it digitally and having it applied by Logan Graphics. And some of the costs involved is the preparation of each box. And I know that, did you get confirmation from Logan that they would be able to do the preparation yet?
Not for paint,
Okay.
only for the wraps.
All right. So it kind of depends on what the final application is, if it's either paint or vinyl wrap, what sort of prep needs to be done. And so we're really proposing to you for a little help in funding to get this project off the road, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Brian?
Yeah, thank you. Whose property are these boxes?
I believe it's ODOT, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, and then you said ODOT would be reviewing those.
Yep. We already have an agreement with ODOT to paint or wrap these boxes. So they wanted the final approval on whatever the art is, and so does City Council. So both of you will get the final approval. We'll ask a final approval from both of you.
Great, thank you.
Valerie?
Yes, I've been along on this ride. It's been a long,
it has. There's a couple of years, I think.
Long ride, I tell you, because it was 2 years ago that we got the OGA with ODOT. And it's been a 3-star item, or it's been on the council goals. It's not 3-star, but it has been on there for several of the annual strategic planning. And I would like to say that I was one of the ones that suggested that they go out for additional funding, which they did, and came back with a $1,500. So congratulations, and that's
Thank you.
awesome. My question was, and one of the questions that was discussed in our time was, are any of these in the historic?
No,
And
these
are
five.
all outside, okay.
Yeah, that was another reason why we chose these five is that the HBSC is going to have much more stringent guidelines as far as paint colors and applications.
Okay.
So we just want to get these done, make sure everyone's happy with the direction, and then we can approach the HBSC to do the interior historic boxes.
Yes, and I would also like to say they have been contacting and working with HSBC on a number of things that I wasn't sure about, whether, because they were on 7th Street, I guess they're on the opposite side of 7th Street. So that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Other questions? Kurt?
The fact that I'm asking questions here, don't take that I'm against this. I think more art's good. But in just thinking about this, as a utility worker, or ODOT worker, whoever coming out to service this, it's going to cause them some concern to preserve this. So would the digital wrap be an easier thing to preserve than would be the paint?
We've gone over that question for probably years, and on our committee, there's some members that feel adamant about paint, and I think with technology changes, I'm one that actually likes the vinyl. There are great substrates of the vinyl. It is light fast, and what I like about it is if it is damaged or needs to be removed, it can also be replaced, because you have a digital file. You just push a button and you get another sticker, versus if it's painted, someone's got to go out and touch that up.
And ODOT has expressed no concern about the extra burden this is going to put on their folks? Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so the motion that the committee had actually made was a request for $3,500. Mark, would you recommend that we put that on a Wednesday agenda or vote on it today?
Vote on it now. This is a meeting, even though it's called a workshop.
Sure. All right, council, do you have any discussion? Anything you want to do, Valerie?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to give the committee, approve the council to allocate $3,500 for Art Box pilot project. It's been in the works for a long time. It's been through twice now. The committee has gone out and gotten the OGA signed. They've also gone out and raised private funds to help pay for it. I think it will be a great, I really like the idea of going down 7th Street, because I agree at the beginning, when I was there, it was always hit and miss, and I think that, this would be a great way to inspire future boxes. Sure. And I just look at them now all the time, ever since I've been in COPA, and say, I look at it as a canvas, and it's just like, they are ugly, so let's do something with it.
All right, we have a motion to give $3,500 for this project. Is there a second? Second from Joel, thank you. Any discussion, council? Brian?
Yeah, after this motion, I would like to have a discussion about our procedure for these motions, because we don't have that right now. And I understand this is a public meeting and we can make motions. That has not been our practice. So maybe we could talk about that.
Sounds like a good topic. Any other discussion? All right, we'll vote on the motion. Valerie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes, I'm supportive of committee recommendation.
All right,
Thank you so much.
thank you for your work on this project. It will be lovely once it's done, I'm sure. All right. We have a presentation today from the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, OLCC. Brad, going to start us off?
Yes, I'm just going to quickly introduce who we have with us today. As the council knows, as part of the Adult Use and Adult Business Ordinance Amendment, council has had many questions related to what are the OLCC rules exactly. So council, a couple months ago, specifically asked that we have someone from OLCC come to a workshop to kind of just give you more background. So we have with us today Max Madsen, who is a liquor enforcement inspector with OLCC. And we also have Eddie Gonzalez, and he is a liquor license investigator and a regulatory specialist with them. He is, my understanding, has been with the OLCC since the city's adult use ordinance was adopted and has a lot of background and understanding of our particular code. So they come today to give you a brief overview of kind of specifically the minor posting rules. Is what we asked them to talk about, but they're ready to answer any questions the council has today.
Thank you. Welcome, Max and Eddie.
Hi, I'm Eddie. This is my colleague, Max. Here, Max, you can pass. Max is going to give you some information here, and as he passes it out, I want to give an introduction about how we look at liquor licenses. We get an application in. We process it, make sure all the required forms are there. Once they're there, it's assigned to me. And so what I do is I take it and I run a background check. And, sorry about that. I run a background check criminally to see what their background is. Then we look at their business operation. We look at their days and hours of operation. We look at entertainment. Is it going to be any gambling? Any video lottery? Is there going to be dancing and stuff like that? And so then we take that and we put it all together, and then we develop what we call a minor posting. And this is where, as I go through these minor postings, if you have questions, please ask, and so I can answer it right away, so you don't forget at the end. But our first and our primary emphasis is public safety. That's the number one thing that we exist for, is to regulate the issuing of the licenses and to make sure that the licensees are in compliance with the rules and the statutes. So we're always looking at the public safety first. And so when we go in and we give a minor posting to establishment, we have 7 different minor postings available. The first minor posting is a number 1. That minor posting means no minors are permitted on the premises at all. They can't even be an employee. And the reason that some people get that minor posting is because 1, it's their business operation and they don't want to change it. Or 2, they don't want minors, period. Some people just don't want minors. They don't want the hassle of control from minors trying to get alcohol, and they don't want to run them out if they're at a certain time. So we take that into consideration. If they don't want minors, then we'll give them number 1. If they want to have minors, then we look at, like I said, the hours in operation. What is their food menu? To what time do they going to be open? And then we can do what we call, we have areas that have no minors, which would be a number 2, and then we could have minors in another area. And I'll give you a perfect example, would be the Wonderbird. The Wonderbird has a restaurant on one side, a bar on the other side. So we have a number 3, all minors are allowed on the restaurant side, no minors allowed on the other side. And we've had a lot of problems with the Wonderbird in the past. And so what happened was that license got suspended through a series of a lot of incidents. There were about 51 over a period of about 16, 18 months, calls of service, arrests. So anyway, that license got suspended. We had a new applicant come in, take over. It took about 9 months for this applicant to get his license. He did get his license, but he has restrictions. That's another thing that we do, is because that premises has a history of persistent problems, we're just not going to give anybody a license there without restrictions. So what we do is we give them a license with restrictions. Restrictions last 1 year before they will ever come off. Now, they can petition to come off after 1 year, but it doesn't guarantee we'll remove them. If there's any calls of service, if we have anonymous complaints, and we look into it, we might not remove it. So, so far the Wonderbird has been very good since we've had the new owner. We hope it continues that way. So then we go into a number 3 minor posting, which is all ages appropriate. Now, if you go into establish and you don't see a minor posting at all, it's because all ages are appropriate. And then we have a 3A after that, and that is where we can allow minors to a certain period of time. And I'll give you an example. So if a place has, like, say, the hall, if he had a pool table upstairs and video lottery, and the video lottery was enclosed, and then we might allow, because after 10 o'clock, his business operation might change, we might allow minors till 10 o'clock under a 3A, so they can come in, play pool, have some food, and then they can go, then they have to be out by 10. Then we have a number 4 minor posting, which is to allow minors to come in and eat only. And that means they can come in, they can sit down, they can eat, they can be at the table until the whole table's done, and then they got to leave. They can use the restroom, but they can't go anywhere else. They got to stay at the table. And that is merely where some people, we have several of them, I can't think of them head here in Grants Pass, but we have several in Medford where we have minors up till 8, 9 o'clock, because after that, then the environment changes. It starts turning into a drinking environment, and we don't want minors in that. So that's another post. Then we go to a number 5 posting, and that posting is for tasting rooms. For instance, if a winery has a tasting room and they just have a tasting bar, then we have a minor posting 5, which allows minors to come in with a parent or a guardian only. Then we go to a number 6, and a number 6 is our real extensive minor posting. And this comes into play. I'm doing one right now. For example, the Randall Theater. I don't know if you're familiar with Randall Theater in Medford, but they moved to another location downtown, and he's going to have a lot of different events. He's going to have some events that are going to have minors with no alcohol, minors and adults with alcohol, and then adults with no minors and alcohol. And so this is a minor control plan 6 that we create for them based on their business operation. So this way it allows them to have, for instance, he can have children activities in the day till 5, 6, 7 at night, and then after that he goes and has the play, and then later on he removes the minors, say after 9 o'clock, depending on what his activities are. And so the last one is a number 7 that we just developed, and that was developed specifically for wineries, but we can also use it for other businesses. And what it states is, even though there's a drinking environment, as long as there's other activities going on, like food, maybe some board games, crayon books, then we can have minors up as far as 9 o'clock. Now, we do have some that we cut off, like the one I think we just gave a number 7 to was a Weekend Beer Company. I think they're up here, and they're a number, I think they're till 9 o'clock, 8 or 9 o'clock, and they're number 7. So those are all our minor postings that we have, and in my opinion, the OLCC does a really good job of controlling and working with licensees to prevent minors from getting alcohol in these establishments. It happens, it doesn't happen a lot. Most of our problems stem from over-service of alcohol. And of course, then we have other physical altercations that take place. But as far as the minors, we're not having a lot of problems in our establishment with the minors, and our minor postings are working really well. And I think that if you did revise the ordinance to allow the businesses, because when they don't have minors, it does hurt them, because a lot of families come to visit during the summertime, and I'll give an example. In Ashland, some of the families want to eat after the theater, after Shakespeare. It gets over at 10:30. We do have some minor postings down there till midnight, but they're basically food restaurants. They're not drinking, music, video, they're food, and so they work very well. And so otherwise, these people wouldn't be able to take their families, after the show to do that. And so I think it works very well. And sometimes what happens in the beginning, we are too restrictive with the minor posting, and then they can ask for a relaxation of the minor posting, because sometimes they don't give us all the information up front, and then Max might go out 2 weeks after and find out, hey, look, they're completely a drinking environment after 8 o'clock when they told us it was after 10 o'clock. Well, then we can change that minor posting right away, and we can either go up or down, make it more restrictive or lessen it. So, and we take that into consideration too when we get calls from the local police department, sheriff, or the OSP, anonymous calls, the public. We take those serious. Like I said, we're about public safety. So And then after I license them, then it goes to Max, who then takes over he takes over the enforcement part, and his job is to work with these licensees to make sure that they're in compliance. And so he'll make unannounced visits, he'll do minor decoy checks, they'll do undercover visits, and so, and then, another thing I want to make sure, if we have a problem property, a problem premises right now, we work on it to get it corrected. And then if we can't get it corrected with restrictions, then we'll seek suspension, and then they'll be out of business. So we do as much as we can to work with them, and we get as restrictive we can in some cases, and sometimes they fail. It's rare. We don't do a lot of suspensions, but they happen now and then. So, but other than that, did you have any questions as we're going?
I'm seeing some questions, so let's do Brian, Valerie, Rob.
Thank you for being here. I actually have a question for the mayor. I'm just trying to remember the context of this presentation. Is this more regarding adult use, or is this more regarding the food trucks? Because I'm not totally clear.
I guess so long as they're here, you can ask whatever questions you want, but I think the context came up with the business license, with the adult business ordinance. Anyway, that's what
I was told. It was about the adult entertainment, the buffer zone.
And things may have changed a little bit in terms of where we're heading with that ordinance, but these gentlemen are here for any questions you might have on either topic. So.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. I think that there's some, at least on my part, lack of understanding as to how OLCC determines, okay, this part of the premises is going to be open to minors until 9 p.m., or this entire premises is going to be closed to minors, period. And so you've already touched on that a little bit. I'm just curious how much of that is perhaps the business plan of the premises owner, but is some of it you kind of look at a site plan from your agency and say, well, you know, you got a pool table here, this is too close to the bar, etc. This feels like really more a place where the main purpose is drinking as opposed to an incidental to maybe a main goal of food service and other layouts or other parts of the premises. So how much of it is subjective on the part of your agency where you say, okay, this can only be open to minors until 9 p.m. or 8 p.m. or whatever?
My experience has led me to look at an application and pretty much predict what we're looking at based on paper. But once I call them and I verify what's on that business information form, then I can confirm exactly where we're going. And I will tell them that, you know what, I'll ask them, are you planning on having minors? And they'll say yes. I say, well, you know what, with what you have here isn't going to work. Why? Well, maybe your menu's too weak. Maybe, you know what, that maybe you're just a bar and all you have is 2 tables there, you know. Maybe you need more chairs, we need more tables, you know, more entertainment for the kids, you know, bigger, larger menu. And then if they don't want to go there, then we will prevent minors from going in.
To some extent, those determinations are made by OLCC.
Oh yeah. We do not let the licensee dictate to us what the minor posting is going to be. We dictate to them what it's going to be based on their business operation. And then if they want to change that, we'll work with them.
So is it fair to say that it's a subjective judgment made on the part of OLCC based on the layout, the business plan, the menu,
My first
the
initial evaluation is subjective based on what I see. And then when I talk to them, then I'll ask them a series of questions. Then I'll get their background check too. And then of course, if that background check has anything criminally, then I got to go there. So all these factors in, you know, and then of course their menu, and then of course what type of license do they have? We have a lot of different licenses. We have the full on premises, which is your hard liquor, beer, wine, cider. Now with the hard liquor license, they must have food, okay? You must have 30 indoor seats, and they must have food, 5 substantial items minimum at all times alcohol is being served or sold, and then they have to declare a meal period. If they close before 5, they have to declare a 2-hour meal period. If they're open after 5, they have to declare a 3-hour meal period. During the meal periods for that license, they must have an entree and a side, or they must have an entree and 2 or more sides to purchase. Then we go down to the beer and wine license, which is less restrictive, and we can work with those having like food trucks, with the beer and wine. And then we can limit them with the minor posting. With the full on premises, the hard liquor, we can't have the food truck. They can have a food truck as a kitchen, but it has to be permitted because the kitchen must be on the licensed premises. It can't be off of it. They have to cook it there. So.
Valerie.
Yes, thank you. This is very informative, so I do appreciate you coming down.
Oh,
because
anytime,
I've had
anytime.
lots and
We're
lots of
happy to.
questions, and I actually had questions with the food truck as well, because I didn't know any of the rules, so this does help. So my question to you is, at what time in history, because we all remember back to the heyday of Grants Pass, in the 70s and 80s, where it was a wild, wild west, and I think that's what you see is the fear of returning to the wild, wild west. So at what time wise did some of these OLCC rules come down and start being enforced to the level that they are now?
Well, I don't think it's so much was the rules change as much as they're being more enforced. I think our agency has come a long ways in the last 10 years. Prior to 16, we were just a liquor agency, and we were running not on a skeleton crew, but we were a small unit, and so we try to do as best we can. We do 6 counties. We do Lake, Klamath, Jackson, Josephine, and Coos and Curry out of the Medford office. So we're pretty widespread. But then when marijuana came in, we got an influx of people for them, but we also got a few people for us to help us, and so basically what we got is more help, better management. So now we're out in the field. We can now say that our investigators are doing the licensing while our inspectors are doing the enforcement. And so I just think that through the years we've gotten better at doing what we're doing.
And my question is, at this point too, you also manage the marijuana, am I correct?
Yes.
So that's kind of hopefully where we'll be moving with that one too.
Well, I hope so. That's a whole different cow there. Whole different cow.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the differentiation and the details and so forth. It's really helpful, very helpful. The question I have is, did I hear you say that there's a bar in town that had 51 violations in 16 to 18 months?
It was 18 months, I think, 16 or 18.
So my question is, why did it take so long to suspend their license?
Because the process we have to, first of all, we get the calls of service, we get the reports from the police department. Then we have to send our people out there also to confirm also and visualize what they see. And then they issue the report, then it has to go to our legal department. Our legal department is backed up, so that takes a while to get the report out. Then by the time the report goes out, then what happens, these guys will then extend the hearing as far as they can extend it, because because their license is still active until it's suspended. So they carry it out as long as they can in the system that we have. And that's why it takes sometimes a year. But now, we can do immediate suspensions, though. The last immediate suspension we did was the Whammy Bar about a year and a half ago. They were out of control, and so we did immediate suspension there. So we can do immediate suspensions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rick?
Thank you. So have you ever heard of a city in their code, instead of just putting the word adult ordinance in there, using actually the definitions like you have on minor posting?
Have I ever seen it?
Yeah, ever heard of it, where the city actually defined?
No, you're the first. Grants Pass is the first.
Okay.
Now, I talk with other cities about adult entertainment and what we consider to be the adult entertainment. When we look at, from the OLCC side, adult entertainment for us would be strictly a drinking environment, drinking and dancing, an open video lottery that's not closed off, live nude shows like The Office in Medford. Those would be adult entertainment that we look at, and that's how we look at it. And so and then that's reflected into the minor posting, and that's how we correlate it.
And I'm assuming that's a 1, right? So those establishments are number 1, but there's no minors anytime?
Yes, yes.
So one of the things we've discussed here is having food truck pod or something that we don't normally have. What rules would apply to alcohol at a food truck?
Now, with a food truck pod, how we license those is we license one person, the owner of the property. Or if the owner of the property doesn't have any interest in it and they lease it out to one guy and then lets that guy sublease spots, then that one person we have one contact. We won't license all of the food trucks. We will license the area. Because what the OCC does, they license real estate. And we will license that piece of property to a person to be the sole provider of the alcohol on that premises. Because that person then controls it all. Even though these other food trucks don't sell, they sell food, their customers can still get alcohol from this one person. Because what happens normally with food trucks is they'll leave at night. And so that one person that's going to be the owner of that property usually will have some type of building, a brick and mortar or some building, because the alcohol can't leave the premises. So once you have the retail license there, the alcohol can't leave and come back. You have to keep it on the licensed premises to sell and store. So that's why we limit it to the one person who's usually the owner that has some way of containing that alcohol and keeping it stored.
Okay, are there other restrictions like not being able to leave and come back?
Yes, now what we'll do is we always have a footprint of the licensed premises on paper. We have a floor plan that they'll fill out. And so that floor plan will include the indoor area, and we have them tell us where's the bathrooms, where's the kitchen, where's the dining, where's the bar, where's your outdoor area, how is it secured, and alcohol cannot leave that premises as an open container. They can leave if the license they have allows for growlers. And growlers can be anywhere from 8-ounce cup up to 2 gallons. And it has to be in a securely covered container when it leaves. And then the licensee is covered. But they can't leave with an open container at all. They can never do that.
Are there regulations regarding minors and a food truck pod if they had alcohol?
No, because, and it depends. Depends on the hours of operation and depends on the environment as we get into the evening. So if they're open at, say, 8 to 5, 8 to 6, and a beer and wine license, based on that, they'll get all ages. But now, if they were to say, go from 8 up until 9, and then at 9, they turn into a bar scene, then we cut the minors off at 9, even though the food trucks might be open till 12 or 1.
Gotcha.
So-
Okay, I think that'll help us as we talk about how to move forward on food trucks, at least give us a starting point for those conversations.
Yeah, anytime. And you have my card, so, you can always email me, call me with questions you have, any one of you, anytime. I mean, we're here to help you, answer any questions you have. If you need some data, we'll get you data. If you need anything, we're happy to work with you and the local agencies, and we want to establish, rapport with everybody, because the only way to control it is if we all work together.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Other questions?
thank you. No, my
Valerie?
question, I just want to thank them for coming because it does give me an avenue. I went onto their website and I'm sorry, but.
I know, it's not, I don't consider it
user-friendly.
user-friendly.
No, it's not user-friendly. So
Yeah.
I truly appreciate this card and you coming and giving us a presentation.
And like I said, because our website isn't user-friendly and the rules sometimes are kind of difficult or kind of bland to read, sometimes, just shooting an email might be easier for you, and I can explain it that way, or you can ask Max. So anything with licensing, you can ask me, or anything with enforcement. But if you can't get a hold of anybody, you can ask me anything. I know what he does, and I know what licensing does. I've been there almost 11 years, so I've done everything with the OCC in Medford, so I can answer any of your questions and help you out any way you need.
Terrific, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thanks for being here today, and that does
thank you for
give
your
us
time.
a
Nice
good
meeting you
amount of
all.
background. Thank you. All right, council, next up we have agenda review. And maybe, Brian, your earlier request to talk about how we're going to proceed in these workshop votes, especially pertaining to committee motions, we should put on a future agenda, or do you want to bring it up maybe during just the mayor council comments on Wednesday?
I'm happy to bring it up Wednesday.
Okay, let's talk about it Wednesday during mayor council. All right, so we do have a Wednesday business meeting. We have a public hearing regarding a sign code appeal from Siegel Automotive. We have a consideration of an ordinance with a multi-dwelling amendment development code for Articles 12, 19, and 22. That has to do with our wildland. No, does not.
It has to do with housing.
Oh, that one's the housing, okay. Housing Development Code. Consideration of a resolution for shared state revenues and city budget. Consideration of a resolution regarding the Urban Renewal Agency budget. Consideration of an ordinance regarding a text amendment to the adult business ordinance. And then council action items, we have consideration of an ordinance that would amend the mobile food truck. It's a second reading regarding the fencing requirements. Council action to consider a resolution allowing the hall to utilize 4 parking spaces for dining. And the city manager has given you all a little handout regarding that today, so you can see a picture of what we're talking about. Consideration of a resolution regarding levying taxes. Consideration of a resolution that would adopt the budget for next year. Resolution to extend the Bragg grant for Northwest Design. Resolution to approve purchase of the Portland Loos. A resolution to provide an interfund loan to the Bancroft Fund. A resolution to regarding the Josephine County Assessor's delinquent sewer charges. A resolution regarding tax receipts, a resolution of the Urban Renewal Agency tax receipts, resolution of the SAIF SAFE membership, a resolution of the Ridge Road water main extension, a motion to readopt investment policy, a motion to acknowledge the April financial report, a motion to accept the May 18th election results, that was the public safety levy, and consideration of an appointment to appoint a member to the Bikeways and Walkways Committee, and we have bumped the Parks Committee member appointment a little bit down the road. Then we have a workshop next Monday to follow up on the urban campground discussion and to discuss LB projects as well as the downtown welcome center. And I'm just going to ask if you guys are all okay with canceling the July 6th workshop following the July 4th holiday. I'm seeing a nod from Brian. Joel looks surprised. Did you really want to meet after the July 4th holiday? All right, that one's canceled. Have a long weekend. All right, anything you want to add, Valerie? Or questions?
I guess I just have a question on the 6th, on June 28th workshop. It's a workshop and a special meeting?
What have we added there?
Well, it says special meeting.
Two consent calendar items.
Oh, those are those, okay.
Resolution agreement, ODOT, transit services, just something to get that in there, and then amending the comprehensive fee schedule for the planning fees that we need to start that process for starting July 1. And so those are just 2 items that we missed in the 16th meeting.
Okay, thank you.
But something that needs to be done before the end of the fiscal year. Rob?
Yeah, so again, I just wanted to remind the council that I was hoping to have a discussion at a workshop on the body cam policy, and I noticed some things that were recommended at the same meeting have made it onto our workshop agenda, but that has not yet. So I'd like to see that on there sooner rather than later.
All right, it is on the list on the back at the moment, which hasn't been scheduled out.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just saying that, for instance, the G Street reconfiguration was mentioned 1 minute before I mentioned the body cam policy, but it already has got a spot on the workshop, so.
Well, the reason for that is that on July 26th, we were looking to discuss several items regarding downtown and G Street, so we just kind of grouped those things together. But discussion, Brian?
I have a different agenda item. Is that okay?
Okay.
So we all had small group meetings with the city manager last week, and all of us are aware that there is some level of staffing issue at the city right now. And I've talked with a couple counselors about it, and I think we all know that this is not necessarily a new issue, but maybe it has gotten a little bit worse. And so my concern is that the issue carries on and it diminishes our ability to address the problems that the city faces. And so while I know that staff is doing everything that they can to address that problem, I think that there may be some things that council could help do from a policy standpoint that could maybe perhaps help them solve that problem even more effectively. And so I would just ask that maybe we consider having that discussion at an agenda here soon. And I've already talked to DJ and Vanessa about it, and they were favorable to that.
Did you want to have a discussion now, or you want us to schedule something out?
Well, since it's agenda setting, I thought we would schedule it out.
Okay. Summarize for me a discussion about what council can do to help strategize the workload.
More so, what policy decisions can council make to help solve staffing issues at the city?
All right. Do you want to talk to Aaron or a staff member later so that they can get some clarity, I guess, on what needs to be presented or discussed? Or myself?
Sure.
I'm a little lost what you're asking for.
Sure. I would be happy to. I mean, okay. I can, if you want me to rattle off a little bit now, I'm happy to do that too.
That would help.
Okay. So I know that the city manager and HR are doing everything within their power to hire people. And we all know hiring is hard right now. So again, I don't want this to drag out and to limit our ability to be effective as a council. And so there, a couple of examples of things that we might be able to do are, there's a housing crisis. We lost a position because they couldn't find housing. And this is just one example, but something that maybe we would want to consider is maybe the city has a rental property or a couple of condos that we can use to, when we hire people from out of the area, they could, as one of the benefits or the perks of their hiring, they could, they could live there for free for 3 months while they're looking for a place to live. Things like that is not within the purview of staff and council would really need to address. Things like adjusting the salary schedule, so the first step is a higher step when people are hired, but maybe the steps as they go up are of a smaller scale. So they're starting at a higher salary, but the increments are less, so we're not necessarily paying a lot more per se. But things like that where we might be able to help resolve the situation.
Okay. Rob?
Yeah, thanks, Brian, for bringing that up. These types of measures, and I'm hoping as part of that discussion, it's brainstorming as much as anything. So we'd want to hear from staff what ideas they may have, but I'd also like to hear from councilors what ideas they could have. I know that in 2006 or 7, there was difficulty retaining planners in the city during a time when, well, we were just ending the boom, but there was a boom building time then. And some planners were offered retention bonuses. Now, I'm not suggesting that that be employed at this time, but it's just an idea of a little bit of outside-the-box thinking that we've done in the past to essentially make staffing and staff's job easier to allow, I guess, the city and council to move at a more reasonable pace. So these types of things have happened in the past. You know, and I you know, whether or not, you know, on Brian's point with condo or whatever, I know there's 3 or 4 doors down from me, there's a house that's, I think it's 3 bedroom, 1 bath. It's an Airbnb, it's across the street from a tennis court and a park, et cetera. I mean, I don't really see, I mean, that could be a very easy to implement and fast to implement way of possibly providing housing so that somebody doesn't, because it used to be literally somebody could come to town and in 1 to 3 days either find a rental for sure and possibly even buy a house in 1 to 3 days. And now those days are over. So, but if somebody had a couple of month buffer for them or their spouse to be able to house hunt, that could tip the scales to somebody, you know, choosing to live here. It's not such a huge mountain for them to climb. So I really like that idea. And as I say, Airbnb could be a way to implement that quickly. And we may, who knows, we may actually snag a few good employees because they don't feel so much pressure in the first, you know, month to find a house to live in.
All right, good thoughts. Sounds like you already have some support in having that discussion in the future, so we'll just have to, yeah, do a little bit of planning for how to get that going. Valerie.
I do have a question with the ARPA funds. I know you said, Aaron, that you were talking with staff and you were putting things together. Do we have any like timeline as to when, you know, you'll have those ideas together, just out of curiosity? Because I don't see it on here. I'm just wondering.
No, it's not on here. If you'd like to schedule that, we definitely would be able to present that to you. We internally have a little more work to do to come up with some harder numbers for you, just because the formulas are there and we're utilizing them, but gathering all the information. So without, you know, getting it really down, I'd want to talk to Jason and Adam some more to figure out when we might be able to really get something to you. But we can definitely have it scheduled or put it on there, and we'll try to meet that time frame also.
I don't mean it in ways to add more, but I just know that it's out there. There's a lot of questions about it. There's a lot of stuff circulating around, and I'd kind of like to have some sort of a framework as to when your staff will have the time to at least give us the initial presentation.
Yeah, certainly. And I can either, we can either get a memo out to you, or we can have a workshop whenever you'd like, and we can, wherever we are with it, even though we might have some numbers, you can have a general idea. But we were thinking it'd be nice if we were able to provide you with some numbers for the 4 pillars and to get some additional guidelines from you on a public process also. So what I can do is talk with the X team and figure out that timeline, and then talk with the mayor and council president and get that scheduled.
All right, anything else today? We will get body cams on there, Rob, eventually. I don't mean to say eventually, like it will be on there. It just, it's on the reminder list right now. We just didn't schedule too far out at this time. And we are kind of working to scale back a little bit of how much we're asking, particularly of the community development department, because they are down a couple of key staff positions right now. And we've been asking a lot of them, so I think for all of you, it's really important that we just really focus on our top priorities and make sure that we are allowing plenty of time to get those things taken care of, instead of trying to cover everything, because otherwise we're just going to end up touching on 100 things and not making progress on 10. And I'd rather see us at the end of the year have made some progress on some of these. All right. Well, we have a meeting Wednesday night, so should we adjourn or should we sit here till then? Valerie.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a second? Rob? Joel was with the big hands too. Okay, all in favor of adjourning until Wednesday night?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, see you all Wednesday night.